Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host for the House of Hardcore podcast, Tommy Dreamer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the House of Hardcore podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Dreamer. And this week, you know him from Ring of Honor, but now he's part of Honor No More. Vincent, welcome to the House of Hardcore podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I would like to say this is part 2 because last week when we started this, whatever evil superpowers that you may or may not have, I lost total internet control, first time ever. And we had to scrap we only got about 10 minutes in. But so hopefully you quell your evil powers just so we can get through this. If I could get through this with Sin Bodhi, I could get through this with you, sir.
Right.
All right. Well, what got you hooked in this wonderful world of professional wrestling?
Like I had said before, when I was about 5 or 6, my grandmother lived close to the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, which was the Civic Center before. She lived in an apartment right at the little pineapple thing. It's about a 5-minute walk. And my family, my father, my aunt Donna is the one who got me really hooked because she was into it first before everybody else. My dad kind of latched on, and cousins and so on. But we used to meet up and then walk to the Dunkin' Donuts Center. And one of the vivid memories I have there's 2 of them. One was I was a big Ultimate Warrior fan when I was a little kid. I loved the Ultimate Warrior, the Rockers. And I remember dressing like the Ultimate Warrior going to the Dunkin' Donuts Center. And it was Taker versus Ultimate Warrior in a body bag match. And I remember the moment of Ultimate Warrior being put in the body bag for a second, zipped all the way up, and then he tore open the body bag and just bursted out. The crowd went insane. I still remember that moment like it was yesterday. And then the 94 Royal Rumble, Taker versus Yokozuna, when he was on the screen cutting the promo in the casket, was one of the coolest things I've ever seen as a kid, live, because I was there live. And those are the 2 moments that kind of really got me hooked. I was a fan the entire time, but those are like the vivid memories I have as a child, being like, this is the coolest thing ever. So
Let me ask you this. Who won the match between Ultimate Warrior and The Undertaker?
I think it was a no contest. It was a house show. Yeah, it was a house show. I think it was a no contest. So he ripped out of the bag before it was fully, like, it kind of like stopped it and then ripped out, and then he fired up, boom, Undertaker took the spill out, and it was like a no contest kind of thing. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think this also explains you a little bit, because I'm feeling you got a bit of the macabre for the with your look and all that stuff, though it didn't always appear this way. But you got the Undertaker in a casket, you got the Ultimate Warrior in a body bag. It kind of starts to explain this science fiction horror guru genre that you got.
Correct. And, even during that time as a little kid, like, my mother is huge into horror movies, huge. Like, we were collecting horror movie prop items since like forever. And I was always he loved horror and wrestling. That was it. That's all I cared about. Like, right now I'm sitting in this room right now with a bunch of stuff, but and going through, I always separated the 2. I always thought in wrestling, like, you have to be something else. You have to be what you're seeing. There's no crossovers, no such thing. So it took a while to kind of get comfortable in wrestling. I started with Spike in 2009. And even then, like we talked about before, I had my Hardy Boy starter kit, studded belt, long curly hair, like, in baggy pants or whatever. And, it took a while to get like comfortable with myself and to realize, you can just, find yourself and your interests and bring them into, the world of wrestling, which took a long time. And I guess that's just with like experience and getting comfortable with yourself and who you really are as a person. So that was kind of that blend.
Speaking of horror, your hair looks like you have a giant tarantula on your head, by the way.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Very
Yes.
fitting today. Much
Yeah.
better than last week.
Yes, it does.
So now you're hooked. You want to be a wrestler, and you find, well, you told me you were basically backyarding. You had purchased a ring.
So I remember it was WrestleMania 2000, or it might even been the No Mercy Edge and Christian Hardy Boys first ladder match there.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, as a teenager, I was like, yeah, I want to do this. Like, this is, as a kid, I was a fan. Like, I was hooked as a fan. But when I really kind of figured out I wanted to, like, be a pro wrestler was around that time. Just because of all the creative stuff they were doing. And then, like, even Undertaker stuff kind of evolved into even more creative stuff. So I was super hooked at this point. And my dad, shut up the bucks to get, like, the old NEWA wrestling ring, which was actually on public access in Rhode Island. And that ring, I came across somebody who was selling it. My dad purchased it, and we put it in my friend Justin's backyard. And I was like 8th grade, even early 9th grade. We'd, like, wrestle around in the backyard, and, didn't know I could do what I watched, but I didn't know anything, obviously. And wrestled around. Those guys grew out of it. I obviously got a little older, grew out of it, but was trying to figure out how I could still do this, and came across a girl that I went to high school with. It was my sophomore year. I was like 15 going on 16. And I must have been wearing like a wrestling shirt or something. And she was like, hey, you like wrestling? Do you want to be a wrestler? And I was like, oh yeah, definitely. Well, my boyfriend's a wrestler, and he trains every, like, I think it was like Tuesday or Thursday, one of the days of the week. And she's like, you should come by and check it out. So I did. I went by there, and it was the first time I was ever, like, in front of some, actual wrestling training. It was during the Rhode Island, like, at that time it was like the Brickhouse Baker and, like, all those guys in that New England scene that I had no idea this even existed. To me, it's just WWF, and that's all there is out there, So it was kind of like mind blowing to me as a younger teen to be like, oh, there's more, there is ways to do this, and I did a little, they had me, like, do a little running the ropes, which I didn't know how to do, and take a bump, which I did just from doing backyard stupid stuff. I could kind of figure it out. And then from there, I started doing, like, little random shows, very limited training, like very, very, very basic stuff. Bumping, running the ropes, simple, stupid stuff, but no psychology, no nothing like that. So I could do everything athletically. And then Spike, I came across Spike because he was at one of these random shows. And, basically he and his assistant there, Ryan Waters, who actually still runs the Spike Dudley School in Fall River to this day, said, hey, you have way more potential, and at this time I was putting money into my gear, like, putting just a lot of effort into my look to just try to stand out amongst others. And they said, you have more potential than what you're doing. If you really want to do this, I have a school in Fall River. As a young kid, I'm the champion of this whatever place, and I'm doing it, you know what I mean? And I'm like, nah, what do you mean? I'm the champ. I'm doing it, And, Taven, I had actually met during this time, and he had gone there in 2008. So he was a year ahead of me. And he was the one that was like, I'm telling you, what we were doing is fine, but there's so much more to this that we were missing. Like, I'm telling you, you got to come and check it out once. And to be honest, it had nothing to do with ego more than I was just intimidated. I was a young kid, and I was just afraid to go to this, uncomfortable setting for me, because I was content where I was in this, just playing wrestler. And I ended up going to a Stephen Rich seminar, was blown away by it, because it was the simplest stuff, a basic psychology, but still something I did not know. So then I realized, wow, I don't know anything. And then, Spike had invited me. I went to one training. He said, okay, you get in the ring, give me a 5-minute match. We did a 5-minute match, and he actually allowed us to call it. And when we were done, he was like, yeah, you guys are athletic, but you guys don't know anything, so if you want to stay, I'm going to break you down completely, forget everything you know, and I'm going to build you back up from the ground. And I it was kind of like, should I do this or not? And I ended up going. And after that, I was hooked, and I was blown away at how much knowledge Spike actually had, because like we talked about, like going over there, I'm thinking Spike Dudley. I've seen him go through tables and do all this hardcore stuff. And I'm thinking like, are we going to learn that? Or like, and then it just blew me away and how much knowledge he had about like psychology and just, all the basics. Cause like I said, you have to know that to do the other stuff he was doing first. So, and then I was hooked. It was like 5 hours, Tuesdays, Thursdays, some Saturdays at a time, smaller group, which was cool because he was able to focus on us and give us a lot of attention to help us. And it was like me, Taven, then you'd have Bennett come in, Tommaso would come in. It was just this core group of guys that actually wanted to do this as a living somehow. And so we all kind of pushed each other to kind of keep elevating ourselves and, work harder. So, and that was when it was 2009, and it kind of started from there.
Spike is very, very much known for his toughness and the craziness, but Spike is one hell of a wrestler. I mean, I watched him. He was also, cruiserweight champion in WWE, but Spike was a hell of a wrestler. I mean, I love Spike, roomed with him all the time. I can't say enough good words about my friend Spike. And now I know why. I guess I've gravitated towards you, because now I find out you're with Spike. You're a Spike guy. So we're all weirdly connected.
And like you said, like it was even from the lockup, I couldn't believe like how aggressive he was and how much more there was to what I was doing just from a simple lockup. You know what I mean? As a young kid, it just kind of blew me away. And everything else he would teach me, like, oh, you would do this because of this. This is the reason why you do this. And it was just all that stuff kind of like, wow, it took a while to kind of click and understand everything, but like the progression of everything each time I would go there would be like, like, wow, it was like 2 trainings and I already felt like I knew so much more than what I was doing, before, that it was just like, oh, this feels right. And yeah, he was, and that's where the acid drop, obviously came from. And that's why I do that. So, and he said, yeah, do it, but don't let anybody kick out, he said.
Exactly. It's your finish, kid. Long story short, Spike was found via the VCR tape when we were looking for a smaller Dudley. And it was Crash Holly's tape that was sent because he had some internet buzz and he was wrestling Spike. And when we asked him and said, hey, who's the guy you're training, wrestling with? And then they both moved from wherever they were living, I believe San Francisco, to live in Long Island. Crash didn't last as long. He had a falling out with, I believe it was Taz, and he didn't want to do ring crew, all that stuff, but it worked out for him because he went to the WWE. He was big friends with Crash, but Spike, it's funny how just guys get hired and all that stuff. It's unique because I don't know if that happens today. For you, you're doing all these indies, like I said, or you said, you got a Hardy Boy starter kit attire. So when you were investing in your gear, you're basically going to Hot Topic and buying like cool stuff. That's where you say, I first met you, which I laugh about, because then I was like, I actually think I do remember you. Because I would totally remember this version, because I think you got a super duper cool look. So how do you go about, because you're doing all these indies, all that stuff. So how do you go about hooking up with Ring of Honor?
So if we go back to Hardy Boys starter kit, like doing the indies, running around the indies for a while. My home base was the Top Rope Promotions in Fall River. And then started doing some Northeast wrestling stuff in 2010. So I started in 2009. I was about maybe a year and a half in now. So I'm getting close to 2011. I went to my first Ring of Honor tryout camp in Philly. This is when like Cornette and Delirious and everybody was there. I went there, and Spike even told me, don't go there with the mindset that I'm going there and getting a contract. He said, go there with the mindset that I'm going there to learn, because chances are they're not going to pick you up. You're very new. And sure enough, like I went there, I did I didn't go out of what I was learning. I did exactly what I was learning, very basic stuff, but felt like I executed it good enough because that's all we were going over at the school. He said, just do what you know right now. Don't try to do anything, dives or anything like that. They have guys who do that. So they're not going to want you because you do a dive over the top rope or whatever it was. So I did. And at the end, they kind of have you at the end of day 2. So they do 2 days, separate you in groups, promos. I was god awful, terrified to talk. Now that's all I want to do. But day 2, they have you kind of stand up after your last match of the camp, and they tell you, yes, you could hold a segment on your own, or yes, you are good as like an enhancement talent, or no. So it kind of went through the ropes of like a maybe, yes for enhancement or no. And it was always like, they tell you why. They'd be like, you're very new. You need to get out there and get more experience, which I was expecting the answer to be anyway. So I went in there with a clear head of like, okay, I know I'm going to be told this. So then it was 2012. I went and got more experience. So a year and a half later, again, I went to the next camp and changed up my look a little bit, and got into a little better shape and did better this time. And they gave me a yes as enhancement. Then they called me in 2012. Kevin Kelly called me and said, are you available for whatever date it was in Baltimore? We want you versus Rhino. So young kid, pumped. I'm about to do this match on television for the first time against Rhino. I've been watching him for years at this point, so I'm excited. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to go 50-50 with Rhino. This is going to be sweet. And they're like, we're going to get 30 minutes on, you know what I mean? Like, this is it, And, again, like Spike and Ryan were like, don't get your hopes up. You just do whatever they tell you. And, that's it. But for me, I was so excited, so I went there and they were like 30 seconds with Rhino. He's going to hit you with the belly to belly and then give you the gore. And I just, I was still pumped. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do my best to make this look like one of the best gores he's ever done. And Rhino was super cool. We did the whole deal. And, the cell on the gore is actually used in the Ring of Honor opening for years after that. And because that was it. That's my main focus, was like, I'm going to try to make this cell look like he killed me, and he brings it. So it made it a lot more easier. But that was my first television experience ever. It was awesome, because in a million years, if we go back to even before the Spike thing, you would, if you told me that, I'd be like, you're crazy, And then I started doing a lot of enhancement stuff. Like I did like a match with Tommaso on a house show and returned from injury, and we had a good time limit for that. And I got a lot of stuff in with that. Just a lot of matches where they could like, let's see what this guy can do, but putting over their guys and whatever. And towards the end, man, like I kept feeling like something was going to happen. Nothing did. And then 2014, and there's no one to blame for this but myself. I got frustrated. I wanted to be there so badly. Nothing was really happening, but there was nothing, there was no spots, and there was no, and even at that time, it maybe was like, oh, well, what do we do with him? What is he? And at that time, I'm thinking like, well, I'm ready. And truthfully, I was not, you know what I mean? But being young and naive, I didn't realize that. And getting all these opportunities, it just felt that way. And 2014 or end of 2013 was my last dark match on one of the Deaths Before Dishonor pay-per-views. I did a dark match. After that, I cut my hair, regular haircut, got married, was having my daughter, and I took 2014 completely away from wrestling. And I thought I was done. I thought I was completely done. I was running a couple businesses as a property manager. And Bennett was the one who actually talked me back into coming back. He's like, I could tell you miss it, because I would always talk about it. And I would do like an indie here and there. And I missed it. You know what I mean? I was just lying to myself, thinking that like, oh, it's not what I want to do, And I was just, again, no one to blame but myself. And I finally kind of was like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to get into, really good shape. I'm going to go to one more camp. I'm going to be, I'm just going to show them that I want to do this. And I went to one more camp, and I changed my body completely. And I just kind of matured, having a daughter and going through some life situations just kind of, I feel like, matured me as a young man, and I went to this last camp. They pulled me in a room, said we're really interested. I didn't hear anything for about 2 months. Then I saw Delirious at a show, and he said, "Are you available this date in your hometown? It's going to be you versus Jay Lethal for the Ring of Honor World title." So I was super pumped about that. Jay's awesome. And he was so good to me in that match too. And that was kind of after that, with 2016, Kevin Kelly called me and offered me my first Ring of Honor contract. And then I was there from 2016 till recent.
Hey there, auto mechanics and super cool do-it-yourself guys who work on their own cars. I want to tell you about rockauto.com, the online store with every auto part at the best possible prices. This is your one-stop shop for everything auto parts. Rockauto.com has been in business for 20 years, and they make it easy to find parts you need at the best possible prices. No more talking to counter guys who need to order your parts, aren't really sure what you're looking for, never have quite what you need, and then after all that hassle, they will still charge you storefront markups. At rockauto.com, you can easily find everything you need, and whether you're a mechanic, an auto shop, or working on your own car, everyone has access to the same incredible pricing at rockauto.com. So if you're a car guy, right now go to rockauto.com and check out all the parts available for your car. You're going to have so much fun looking at car parts. So once more, go to rockauto.com. No promo code needed, as their pricing is already that good. When you order, make sure you tell rockauto.com that you heard about them on the House of Hardcore podcast. rockauto.com. Now let's get back to the show. You've had, kind of the same character, but you had more, I want to say the last year, a bigger push with your group.
Yes.
How did all of these, okay, so you're signed and now they have somewhat of a direction for you?
So I'm signed and I'm part of the Kingdom. So Taven was coming back from injury and was creating the Kingdom in his own image. And Taven had presented two people, myself and TK, who's no longer in wrestling. But even when I came in, I was just kind of I was a guy, you know what I mean? Even I look back in the pictures, it just kind of I had all the tattoos, short hair, whatever, but really didn't have a thing at this time. But I'm part of the Kingdom, you know what I mean? We're the first ever 6-man tag champs. We went through a tournament and we had a pretty good thing going with the Kingdom. TK had gotten hurt. He broke his leg at one of the pay-per-views, and the Kingdom kind of took a back seat. We had to drop the 6-man tag titles, which we did in Vegas against Bully and the Briscoes on the anniversary pay-per-view. We lost the 6-man tag titles. Silas had filled in for TK because it was the night before he broke his leg. So we dropped it the next day at TV. And at this point, when we kind of took a back seat, me and Taven were doing these random kind of tag matches and these darks and stuff. And I felt like it was a moment where I said, oh man, when this thing ends, what am I after this? What do I do after this? What would be the niche carved out for me? What, it just kind of made me think, because we were taking such a back seat that I started to think of ideas and stuff. And I remember us sitting in my living room at this time with my wife, and I had all my horror props and my masks that I collect from different movies. And she said, why don't you do something with a mask or horror movies? You love all that stuff. She's like, why can't you do that in wrestling? And it was from that point, I was like, you're right. Why don't I just do something, create my own thing there? And after that, I started, kind of bringing that stuff into wrestling. And I started with the mask stuff. And, I did the red balloons for a second. It was just kind of it looked cool, but there was no legs to it kind of thing. But I was showing people, I felt like I was showing people, introducing them to what I like and who I am and what my interests are. So that was the start for me. And during the Kingdom, I started doing that, and it kind of evolved itself over time. Taven had won the world title. Me and TK weren't really working as a tag, because at this point I found my groove of what I kind of was, the direction I was going in. Then we had a phone call, and there was plans to separate me already because of it. And then the idea was for me to turn on Taven. And that's when I kind of trimmed the fat off the character. I got rid of I got rid of a lot of like cliche horror stuff and kind of transitioned it more into Vincent, into myself. And that was right after I turned on Taven. And then me and Taven had the 2-year angle in Ring of Honor. And that's when, Bill Carr jumped on, Bateman came in, and that's when the Righteous was formed. And aesthetically, we just kind of all fit, and we're all good friends, to begin with. So everything just kind of clicked and just kept evolving from there. Even the look, everything just kind of evolved right from there. So that's kind of how that kind of, climbed from there.
Cool. Big fan of both your partners. Big fan of yours as well. Bateman's West Coast guy, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I wrestled him. I loved wrestling him. It was
Bateman's great.
Yeah, no, he is.
Bateman's been wrestling for a long time.
Yeah.
Since like the late 90s or something. But yeah.
And Bill Carr was my go-to House of Hardcore, a very, very good tag match. So I was happy to see everybody get signed because I think both guys are very, very underutilized in the sense of getting full-time jobs within the industry, and I hope they get them back soon. The only fallback I saw with anything Honor No More when they came to Impact Wrestling was people were like, it's so weird seeing you with Taven because you guys were in such a feud. I didn't know any of the history, nor did I don't get Ring of Honor television. I don't get Impact Wrestling television, but I have to watch it on the screeners all the time. But I'm just my local cable provider does not give me Ring of Honor, which I wish they did because I would totally watch it. Would you say that you and Taven was like the highlight of your career there?
For sure, because that's when I talked about my vision that I had and what I wanted to do and what I was comfortable doing. And that's when, I started talking, all the vignettes and the promos and even the aesthetics, like the way it looked, like that's when all that stuff kind of evolved. And I think it was, the story just kind of wrote itself, with like us knowing each other for so long. And I felt like that was after the cage match, we went off to the cage match in Philly at the 2300 Arena, which was awesome to do. Main event in a cage at the 2300 was so cool to me. And it just it had the feeling even the night before. I remember like just being kind of anxious and nervous to do the match, but it wasn't because of the match. It was because of, wow, we did this story for almost 2 years and here's the final match. Like it felt like, okay, this is the end of this entire story, this entire book that we just wrote. So it had that feeling. And after the match, when I'm standing over Taven with the crown on and I'm all, we're bloody and whatever, it just had that visual. I felt like, okay, this is great. So now the Righteous is going to kind of, move forward. And we were supposed to start something with Jay Lethal. And it was supposed to be me and Jay Lethal actually at the last final battle. So we were going to go into it with Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal was going to join the Righteous. And the whole idea was like Jay Lethal was going to help me lead me to the Ring of Honor world title as part of the kind of in the group. So I was going to use that as like the, to climb to the world title. So there was a lot of ideas even after Taven that I thought would have really kind of helped my career a lot. The Taven thing did, and I think it would just been another layer, to kind of keep that kind of momentum kind of climbing up. But unfortunately, like right as we were starting it, everything kind of happened and it took a sidetrack. So at Final Battle ended up being me, Bateman, and Bill Carr winning the 6-man tag titles for the last time because I was the first ever. So we kind of capped it off the last ever. So, which I was very happy for Bill Carr and Bateman to kind of have that like going out of Ring of Honor, so for me to see those guys kind of, get a little something from ROH being there for such a short time was cool for me.
Do you still have those tag titles?
I still have them. Yes, I do.
Make sure you get him away from Bill because he'll sell it.
Yes, he already said I'm not giving them back.
Glass half full. That's awesome. Glass half empty. You getting a push to the top could have put the company out of business. So there you go.
Right.
Honestly, that's what Rhino always says. He's like, Rhino has put, I think, 3 companies out of business. And he's like, every time they put the title, I'll be the company goes out of business.
Yeah, I mean, and that was one of those things. Like, even if I didn't win the Ring of Honor World title, the whole thing with working with Lethal just would have been a whole new, it would have really kind of separated me from everything that I was doing before, and kind of like, okay, this guy's on his own now. He's doing this. You know what I mean? It was one of those things. So win or lose, the story just would have been cool to do. Just kind of elevate it with layers.
Business wise, you can understand how Ring of Honor goes out of business. They have no fans.
Correct.
They're based out of Baltimore, Maryland, which has a very, very strict athletic commission, and they're trying their best to get fans, to get content out there.
Right.
I've heard the strict, I guess, protocols, COVID protocols that go. If you could describe that.
Yep. So, when the whole COVID thing hit, we actually had a pay-per-view in Vegas. I flew my family out to see me on this pay-per-view. As soon as the wheels hit the ground, I get a text saying the pay-per-view has been canceled. And I was like, oh shit, I just flew my whole family out. But my family has never been to Vegas. So I was basically like, okay, we'll go have a good time. You guys can check out Vegas and make a little vacation, a 4-day vacation out of it. So they had a good time regardless, but the whole point was to, watch me wrestle there, and they'd never been there. So that's when that all started. And, they did take care of the talent during the pandemic. I'm like, everybody got paid, nobody got cut. So they were very, very cool to do that. And then once we started coming back, we had the bubbles. So, which meant you go there, before you leave, you get tested on Zoom, you go there, you get tested again, you stay in your room, you don't come out until until you're told to. And you wouldn't even see people through passing. It would be like you'd be on a schedule where like there'd be nobody in the building but what you're supposed to do with whoever you're supposed to do it with. And that bubble kind of carried on for a long period of time, like with all the testing and the same routine all the way through. And we were doing the no crowd stuff. And the thing that I didn't understand is when we were doing the no crowd stuff, why we were running these giant buildings or these giant 20,000 seat arenas. My personal opinion, I think they had the ROH dojo located in Baltimore. You can just pipe and drape and just film, make a little entrance and just film right at the dojo and have these no crowd shows there, which I think would have saved them a lot of money instead of renting out these giant buildings. So that carried on for a while. We did, I forget, one show, it was one pay-per-view where we had a crowd. Then we went back to the no crowd. And then we did the Cage weekend, which had a crowd at 2,300, which was great. Ended up selling out the second night, the night of the Cage. And I was like, personally, I felt that night was like, okay, we're coming back. Everybody's coming back, and but I guess they were already in danger at that point, which a lot of us did not know that. And then it was kind of, brought us to here, so that was kind of, so the bubbles were very strict, very strict, very strict.
And you could basically put all the talent on a Zoom call and.
Yes. Yep. For the last day, you mean?
Yeah.
Yep. So we had a Zoom call. So I had gotten an email that said, we have a Zoom call coming up. We want to discuss the future plans and future dates. And we want to talk about what we're going to do moving forward. So part of me was like, okay, this is good. And part of me was like, this is good, but there's definitely something more to this. And I did not expect the extent of it. So we had a Zoom call with everybody. And once I saw like all the talent, because we were doing Zoom calls before that to set up, okay, we got this TV coming up and protocol, we'd always have a Zoom call before each one. This one, it had the entire roster, the UK, Australia, They weren't in the other ones because they weren't coming over yet. So it was just strictly like the people that are being used for these, no crowd tapings. And that's when I was like, oh, this is a little bigger than I thought, and that's when, they pretty much laid it on us just like that and said, like, going forward, we're making some changes, and everybody who's under contract that's upcoming January 1st, you're not going to be renewed. And anybody who's extended contracts, which go to 2023, your contracts will be up March 31st. So technically, I'm still under contract till April 1st. And that's pretty much how it went. Everybody, spoke their piece on what they thought and, the thank yous and all that stuff. And then that day, it was 2 days before Halloween. So I'm trick-or-treating and I'm sweating and I'm freaking out because I have no idea what the future holds for me. I usually dress up and have fun with my daughter. I probably went trick-or-treating, I think, in my pajamas because I was just, it was that day. And I'll be truthful, I went downstairs and I was very shook. My wife had to calm me down and say, like, everything's going to be all right, it'll be good, and I was like, super teary-eyed and emotional over the whole thing because this is how I live. I know nothing else. I didn't go to college. And I should have. I wish I did go to college for some things, but I always focus on wrestling. That's it. I just wanted to be a pro wrestler. So I truthfully, I just felt like I know nothing else. This is what I do. This is, what I want to do, so for that to finally get somewhere after so long, and then it's just like, okay, stop. That's it. It was almost like, oh my God, full blown panic, and that was a real rough week. And it was right before, it was a couple days before we flew out on Monday. So we had this meeting on Wednesday. We flew out on Monday after Halloween, or the day after Halloween rather. And we had TV tapings. So everybody at the TV tapings was, it was so emotional because we just got hit with all this news. So it was a tough couple days to do that taping, because it was like, is this the last time we all see each other? Like, what's going to happen? Like, there was we knew, like, we got our answer, but there was no definitive answer for what the future held for everybody. So, it was kind of
for the longest time, I've said the best thing to happen to Ring of Honor was them announcing that they were going on hiatus because it got a buzz about them. And that last show was super duper special. Still, there's the unknown. Most people felt like it was going to go away. There was not going to be no WrestleMania show because they said there was going to be a WrestleMania show and then they were going to move forward. A lot of people within the industry didn't feel that way. And then last week, as we're recording this, Tony Khan makes the announcement that he's purchased it. We still don't have any real information what's going on, except for he's going to be the booker. Don't know if it's going to be a separate brand, but I mean, he has a lot of people already under contract. Don't know if he's going to use any Ring of Honor people. So that is that with that chapter for Ring of Honor, which then leads us to Honor No More. You kind of fell into this situation, which is, I don't want to say smart by you, but hey, shit happens. You were not part of the original group. And you went there just to have a meeting, show your face. Even though I'm a big fan of yours, even a bigger fan every single week that I see you. Then one of the members who was going to be in the group gets COVID. And then we're like, well, we have to do this. And you were there. And that worked out for you because then you're having a match. Hey, this guy's pretty good. I mean, I knew you were good. I haven't seen you wrestle in forever. I love the look. I love the character. And then you were handed the ball and you scored for yourself. And you're part of a hot group and a hot angle within the world of Impact Wrestling. What you said to me, something that really, really stuck with me, was when, like I said, part of my job is for Impact. I watch the screener and then I give feedback back to talent, or when I'll watch your match and I'll give you feedback and you're like, and then a lot of the Ring of Honor guys are like, we never got feedback.
Yeah. I mean, when you called me after myself and Josh had that match, it was just like, it was comforting, because like, I mean, you want to know if you're doing good. You want to know what you can work on. You want to know what you should change, or an idea that maybe you can add. And if it's like, sometimes it works for you, sometimes it doesn't, but it's just like, there's something there, you know what I mean? To kind of be like, okay, I'm on the right track, or okay, next time I won't do this, or you know what I mean? Instead of like, not, you know what I mean? You can always go, it was good, but like, what does that do? You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather hear like, okay, tell me what wasn't good, or tell me what should be changed, or what can I do better next time, or where, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm a big fan of that. Even after my match with Heath, getting an email from Lance Storm, who's helping out, kind of breaking stuff down, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that that line of communication to me is very important, because you want to know like what's going on,
And it's
and
also
like,
to make everybody better.
right. And I'm a,
You're the shits. You're going,
right.
if you are the shits, it's going to be, this will help you not be the shits.
Honesty, goes a long way, and like I said this to D'Lo actually recently. I said, you know what I like about this place? The honesty, you know what I mean? Like this is what you're doing, or no, you can't do this, or this is where we're going, or this is what, you know what I mean? This is what we see you doing, or whatever, it just gives, like, in this crazy world of wrestling, those kind of things give someone a peace of mind to know, like, okay, thank you. This is what I have to work on. I put it in the pocket. Now I remember it, and now I can do better, or whatever. Or thank you, like, it sounds good. Whatever it is, it's just, it adds so much to, everything. Just the honesty, and everybody there, for the short time I've even been there, has been so honest. And like, the communication is unreal in comparison. I've never really had that. And the critique to me is awesome, because I came from a school where Spike, that's all he did was critique and give you feedback and tell you what sucked and tell you what was good and whatever it was. So it was that was one of the things that really stood out to me going to Impact, was that was big to me, because it was just so different to be like, oh, there's communication here. This is fantastic, with everybody.
Well, let me leave you with this, just because I know you're also a little crazy. When you say there's nothing you've ever known, you left the business and you were doing other things. You were managing other people's business. So I know you don't have to worry about that now, but one day your body is going to say, I can't do this anymore. So you need to use whatever wrestling and the vehicle that wrestling has gotten you for either other interests, or use it to do other things in your life, because you've already survived. It wasn't the survival you wanted. So don't discredit your lack of, I remember you telling me you were managing a gym, you were doing, or 3 gyms, and you just told me you were property managing. It's not the job that you wanted, but you were doing it. So,
Right.
and you did it for a year and you chose to come back.
Right.
So don't ever forget about that, because wrestling has opened up a lot of doors for me. I mean, you and I have done a movie together, which is now currently available on Tubi. So that is, and with your look, I know you're creative with music. I feel you're a very, very creative person. You know what your character is. If you're into writing, friggin' write a horror film. Anthem owns an entire movie division, which is wanting to do more. So the world is yours if you, instead of going crazy about it, open up that world and be like, wow, now where can I go from here?
Right.
So please remember that, because you are super duper talented. I see a lot in you, and so does everybody else. And you've earned your stripes already. And I think for you and Honor No More, the best is yet to come. So I'm going to end it with that on a positive, because I like you to be positive. I also now look like I look like Steven Seagal in your picture today, by the way.
You kind of do.
How do fans find you on social media?
Social media, you can find me on Twitter at the Horror King VM. On Instagram, you can find me at Righteous Vincent, and same thing with Facebook, Righteous Vincent. I have t-shirts, my schedule for Impact or any other indies that I'm doing, and that's where you can find me.
Well, that is awesome, and I thank you for taking this time out. He was helping his daughter take off her training wheels, and thank you for giving me this time. I really, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And, that is this week's House of Hardcore podcast with Vincent. We'll see you then.